Coming up on Main Street, we'll introduce you to some people who make sweets a very enjoyable part of our lives. Join us for Main Street, Sweets for the Sweet.
Funding for Main Street was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you who support quality programs such as Main Street that appear only on public television.
Hello and welcome to Main Street. I'm Barbara Deeb. On this edition of the program, we're going to share some savory stories about people who've made their living making the world a sweeter place. We're here at the Kentucky Museum on the campus of Western Kentucky University as we begin our tasty tales. Our first story takes us to Mary Jane's Chocolates in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Mary Jane Meszaros grew up with specialty chocolate shops as a normal part of her life. When she and her family moved to Bowling Green, she found the city lacked a chocolate shop, and that gave her an idea. Her taste for fine chocolates and that idea came to fruition in Mary Jane's Chocolates, where she strives for perfection and delivers sweet satisfaction to her customers. Our next story introduces us to Duncan Hines, the man behind the brand name. Hines was a pioneer of branding and marketing long before it was profitable. His seal of approval became the gold standard for restaurant and food preparation, still honored today. This portly traveling salesman from Bowling Green was no culinary master, just an average guy in search of a good meal served in sanitary conditions. Duncan Hines' gastronomical journey is chronicled in a permanent exhibit here at the Kentucky Museum on WKU's campus and helps us learn more about the man behind the cake box. Our final story is about an ice cream. Not just any ice cream, it's a unique product that can be found worldwide and made right here in Kentucky. Dippin Dots is pegged as the ice cream of the future and is made in Paducah. This sweet treat is made with old-fashioned ingredients in a very high-tech way. We're talking about sweets for the sweet on this edition of Main Street.
Way back in 1992, my wife Mary Jane and I moved here, and our daughter, from Cleveland, Ohio. And we started looking around and couldn't find the fine chocolates that we grew accustomed to at some favorite places we had up in Cleveland. So we started asking our friends, and we said, there's got to be a chocolate store around here. This city's so big, where's the chocolate store? And they said, well, we don't think we have a chocolate store. And Mary Jane said in the back of her mind, someday if they don't put one in someday, I'm gonna try to figure out how to bring one to Bowling Green. So she let that go, and we were there for 7 years, went back to Cleveland for a new job for about 5 years, and actually, make a long story short, we came back in 2005, and this is now our permanent home, and there still wasn't a chocolate store. So my wife says, I'm still gonna look into this some more. And what she found out then was about an organization called RCI, Retail Confectioners International. And Retail Confectioners International was an organization that specialized in chocolate making. And so she contacted them and found out how to start taking courses to become a chocolatier, and sort of the rest is history.
My mom is Mary Jane, the famous Mary Jane, and that is actually her name. She originally named the store Bowling Green Chocolates, and on some prodding, she decided that it was probably best that we do Mary Jane's. So
I think it's important just for the local business and for the people in Bowling Green to have something unique that they can come get. It's different than stuff they find in the stores, and it has that more personalized touch, so I think that is what sets us apart from other people.
We are one of a very small handful of chocolatiers that uses Belgian chocolate. So we use a very high grade chocolate, so it is a very kind of different product because it's all handmade.
Well, we get the chocolate in these big blocks from a company And what we do is we melt it down and we temper it, is what it's called, in our big machine. And then what we do is we have something to put in the middle of it. And then we run them through the machine, and then we have a cooling tunnel that takes about 5 minutes to go through. And when they get out on the other side, they're ready to go out on the shelf. So we put them in cups and we put them out on the shelf.
A lot of times we're approached by customers saying, you know, oh, can't you just melt it down and put some chocolate on strawberries and have them dipped right away? And it's not that simple. You have to temper chocolate. It's a scientific process. It's not something that happens just by putting chocolate in the microwave. We actually have to take the temperature. We melt it only to a certain temperature. It can't get over 120 degrees or it'll burn. And then we take it down to a certain temperature, which feeds crystals into the chocolate. It feeds good crystals in. So it gets kind of, it's a lot more complicated than, than one would think.
Well, I'm very proud of the fact when I eat it how good it is. The quality of it is never in question. So it's very good. I became sort of a snob, I guess, a chocolate snob. People tease me a little bit. I won't eat Hershey's anymore because I like ours. Ours has much more cocoa butter in it, a higher percentage. The finer chocolates have that, and you definitely can tell the difference when you bite into it.
Quality is very important to us. We want to make sure that each one of our packages that goes out, each piece of chocolate that we go out, is suitable for the customers. Sometimes our chocolate goes out of temper and it still tastes good, it just will look a little cloudy or something like that, and we can't sell that because that's part of our quality control, is we want everything to look tip-top, perfect shape when we put it out.
I really like the customers and making people happy when they have that feeling of kind of like their childhood all over again. Is really satisfying, rewarding.
One of my favorite things is, especially when I make something personally, is when they want to try it and I give them a sample and they're like, this is the best chocolate I've ever tasted, this is better than Godiva, better than Ghirardelli. And when they are excited to come back and like, oh, I'm going to tell all my friends about this, I'm going to get all my gifts here, that's special. That's very special to us, that they see us as something unique and something different that they want to come back and get again.
Well, it actually improves the quality of life, I think, for the citizens of the area. Fine chocolate is sort of a little luxury that anybody can afford, and in my opinion, there's nothing better than a good fine chocolate after lunch or dinner, or breakfast even for me.
It's definitely different than any job I ever thought I would have. I wish I could smell it still. Every customer that comes in is like, oh my gosh, it smells so good in here, but since the second week I haven't been able to smell it. But it's just really cool to, when you tell people, I work in a candy shop, and they always assume, is there just like chocolate running down the walls? I'm like, not exactly, but it's just a really fun environment, and especially it being a family business, having Mary and her daughter Marie working here, and then when Gary comes in too, just the family atmosphere, they make you feel like part of their family even though you're not.
Duncan Hines, a local product from Bowling Green, Kentucky, is able to establish a name through first his publishing ventures that people can trust. And this led to a phenomenal success in the packaged food industry, because they take that trusted name, apply it to products, and they're instantly successful because of the trust that's been built up over a number of years. He was born in Bowling Green on Kentucky Street, not very far from this building, as a matter of fact. He unfortunately lost his mother at a very early age, and then was sent to live with his grandparents out in Browning, Kentucky. She was a great cook, and he was influenced by that. She was a very intuitive cook. She knew when to take something out of the oven. She didn't use recipes, and she used fresh products there from the farm, and he always appreciated that throughout the rest of his life. He truly enjoyed being out, being in America, being free. He loved when he bought his first automobile. because then he wasn't, tied down by schedules on the train. He liked just going out and exploring. But everywhere he went, he kept a little notebook in his breast pocket of restaurants that he visited. He would ask about local products, about their specialty at the restaurant and prices, and he'd make a little note about the atmosphere of the place too occasionally. And he would recommend places to travelers, fellow traveling salesmen, but also other people who are traveling around the byways of America. And he became sort of an expert at that. And eventually, he decides that to maybe cut down on some of that communication, constant communication with people, he would send out in one of his Christmas cards a little listing of almost a couple hundred restaurants that he would recommend in states that he visited. And it was instantaneously successful. Once the card went out, he sent out 1,000, but he's a traveling salesman, so that wouldn't have been unusual. He gets all kinds of calls asking for more copies of it. He has copies printed, and he actually begins to sell some of those. He began to think, I think I've got a marketable product here. And so in 1936, he issues the first copy of Adventures in Good Eating. And he's just a fun person because even when you read the entries in that book, he's still a hometown type of person, someone that you could sit down and chat and still ask for a recommendation about a restaurant. And that's the way he wrote them. They're very easy to read. They were in alphabetical order by state first, and then by city, and then by restaurant within the city. So it was a very handy book, easy to use, a glove compartment must in every automobile of the period. And so this subsequently led to hotels. He began a Lodging for the Night, another publication where he recommended hotels, and then eventually a couple of others that related to vacation spots and where you could go. But the books were very successful and established his reputation and subsequently his name as something that people could trust when it related to good food, quality food. And so once the books are very successful, he begins to allow the restaurants and hotels that are listed to hang a sign in front of their establishment saying, "This is approved by Duncan Hines." Well, that couldn't be the difference between a break-even business and a successful one. So people were willing to do that, but he's so smart, he does not let them buy the sign, he leases the sign to them, so that if he comes back the next year and they do not meet his minimum standards, he can take the sign back. So Roy Parks, who was working for ConAgra as this marketing specialist, approached Duncan Hines in a different way. He came to him and said, I believe that if you would put your name on a brand of food products that were tested and were high quality, that you could actually help change America's eating habits, that they could eat more nutritiously, that we would be a healthier nation if you would do this. And so almost immediately after their meeting, they formed Hines Park Foods and began issuing food products under the name. So that led to almost 150 different food products coming out under his name eventually. Sliced bread, salad dressings, seasonings, a whole array of food products. But of course the one that everybody knows about are the baking mixes. And these were test marketed first in Omaha, Nebraska. All the raw products, as you can imagine, for a cake mix, the wheat, flour, and all that would be available in that area. And they test marketed it, and it was very, very successful. One of the reasons it was so successful was the fact that Duncan Hines, going back to his childhood, insisted that fresh eggs be added to the mix by the housewife, rather than the other packaged cake mixes that were available that had dehydrated eggs in the mix, and all you had to add was water and oil. So, of course, this led to a fluffier, tastier cake because you were using fresh eggs. Duncan Hines was very interested in making sure that his name was only associated with top quality products. So many, many times he was hands-on as far as making sure that the product met his standard, that he would actually use it in his own kitchen. People trusted him as a person first, and then the name under these food products becomes nationally, even internationally known, but they once it takes off on that international level, they forget that he was an actual person. And so I always want to emphasize that he was a real person, that he was born right here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and enjoyed his heritage from this area. You know, it was always really important to him, and eventually moves back to his hometown and establishes his base here.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge to come up with the next great idea. You know, what are you going to do to top the original Dippin Dots idea? And you know, this is our 26th year in the business, and it's always, we're always looking for that next new product, new flavor, new idea, new way to market the flavors, new way to market the products. It's just an ongoing challenge. It started with Kurt Jones, the inventor and founder of Dippin Dots. He happened to be on a weekend. He was making some homemade ice cream and talking with one of his friends about what he was doing at work and how he was freezing these probiotics, and the method he was using was freezing them in liquid nitrogen, and it was able to make the product less ice crystals and just a superior product. And then he just happened to think, I wonder what homemade ice cream would taste like if I froze it that way. So he froze it that way in his kitchen. About 6 months later, he quit his job and started Dippin Dots. Well, Dippin Dots is very similar to any other ice cream on the front end. So we have the milk, the cream, the sugar, and all the ingredients that make up Dippin Dots are blended in. The flavoring is added. And then the part that differentiates us from other ice creams is the freezing technologies. And we developed our own freezing technology where we actually run the liquid mix through a cryogenic processor and turn that liquid mix into beaded ice cream. And it's done by, basically it's dripping the mix into liquid nitrogen at 320 below Fahrenheit, and then it's instantly frozen. Then we bring it back out of that liquid nitrogen bath and we package it in various packaging options. And then we put it in a minus 45 degree warehouse for storage until we're ready to ship it out. And our shipping and distribution is quite unique also because we don't ship on refrigerated carriers like most ice creams do. We have to pack our product in dry ice and then we ship by commercial carrier. So we've developed our own cold chain, our own distribution system, and it's taken 26 years to evolve and develop into what we are today. It's a challenge. Distribution is probably our biggest one, you know, the storage and the distribution, because it makes it much more expensive because we have to ship small amounts on dry ice to places all over the country. You know, we have probably close to 4,000 different locations that we have to ship to. So it makes it a real challenge. We have a research and development department, and they do a lot of the, what I would call the upfront work, and looking at the trends, you know, what are people liking, what are the flavor trends, and there's a lot of research and magazine articles out on that, so we try to stay up with that. And then they provide those trends to a flavor committee, and the flavor committee has input from our customer base, also from the theme parks and the shopping malls and things. So they come together collectively as a group and start choosing what flavors that we want to try and to put out before the public. Most of them are brought in and out. You know, we have several standard flavors that we keep all the time, but we circulate new flavors probably on a quarterly basis, and on an annual basis we'll introduce something new, and then we'll rotate it in and out. And of course seasonal flavors will rotate in and out also. We are Kentucky Proud product. Everything we manufacture, everything right here in Kentucky. There's only one other Dippin Dots plant in the world, and that's Seoul, Korea. So we service most of the world out of Paducah, Kentucky. And we are exporting to 11 different countries. and it's all with Kentucky pride, everything from Paducah. Probably the biggest thing it takes to work here is a good work ethic. You know, people that want to work, people that don't care to get involved and get their hands not necessarily dirty, but maybe sticky. But it takes people that don't mind going the extra mile. And if it requires overtime to get the target made for the day, then they're willing to do that. If it requires going out at night or going out on the weekends in order to present the product or to make some sales, then that's what's required. So we have people all across the board that are more than willing to give of their time and resources to make the product successful and to share the product with other people. It's an innovative idea, but it's also a very high quality product. And I think that's what really keeps us going, is because one, the innovation attracts people to try it. The quality brings people back continuously again and again to continue the business. And that's been really important to us, is to have repeat customers, satisfied customers, and they bring in new customers. It's always exciting because Dippin Dots is one of the very few products where you can ask someone about Dippin Dots and they can tell you the first time they ever tried it. There's not very many products that can make that claim, but it's very exciting to hear those first stories, how they first tried Dippin Dots and how excited they were. And that keeps our jobs exciting and continuously looking to see those new experiences. I think people don't expect the texture and the flavor burst to come out because they're really not expecting it. They're expecting it to be something different than ice cream, but whenever they taste it, they get the flavor of ice cream, the smoothness of ice cream, but then a lot more because they get the roundness and the extra smoothness because of being frozen in liquid nitrogen. And then as it warms up in their mouth, they get all that creaminess, and flavor is really coming out and more alive. So you always get a smile, and that's the most important part.
Well, we've come to the end of our journey, but we hope you've enjoyed our stories about sweets for the sweet. With Mary Jane Meszaros and her quest for the perfect chocolates in her specialty shop in Bowling Green, we found out that Duncan Hines is more than a brand name that stands for high quality. He was a man that was ahead of his time, and he had a major impact on food and how it's consumed today. Then we visited a high-tech ice cream maker in Paducah that produces the ice cream of the future in Dippin Dots, a new take on an old idea. We'd like to thank the Kentucky Museum on the campus of Western Kentucky University for hosting this edition of the program. Now, our producers would love to hear from you. We welcome any questions, comments, or story ideas. Check out our webpage at the address on your screen. You can also find archived editions of the program there as well. Until next time, I'm Barbara Deeb. And remember, we're just around the corner on Main Street.